Jess, let's be brutally honest. If you could tell homeowners one thing about their living spaces that they absolutely don't want to hear but desperately need to, what would it be and why are we so blind to it?
There are so many answers to this, but my mind just goes straight to windows. They're costing you money if you don't get them right, and they are creating unhealthy spaces if you don't get them right.
Why are they costing us money?
Well, they're the biggest hole in the envelope that there is, so it's a lot of heat gain. And
thermal wound, if you will.
Yeah. Lots of heat gain, lots of heat loss. And they're hurting the envelope because of the huge amount of thermal conductivity in the frames. If they're aluminium, the cheap ones, and they're condensating and they're creating mould issues. So spend more money on your windows in the outlay and make them smaller.
You're just in Europe.
Yes.
And so the difference in windows is vastly different
it's
to what
vast.
that. Well, what we see in our space are the same, but what we see as a broader view in the Australian construction world and the Australian homes, they're completely different. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Actually, when I went over to Europe, I wasn't thinking about construction window. I wasn't thinking about how different the houses were going to be. I was just thinking about going on a school holiday. But as soon as I got there, it was immediately obvious to me how different their construction is. Their doors and their windows are what we consider high performance. And of course, they get snow where I was. And so that's a necessary thing. But we also get very, very cold here, and that seems to just slip people's minds when they're designing their homes.
It's bizarre, isn't it? You're in town right now because you are, thank you by the way, a part of our SBA event today, and we're talking about health and wellbeing in buildings, and a big part of what you do is about trying to make that environment inside as healthy as possible. So we touched on mould. Can you tell us a bit about mould and why it's bad?
25 to 30% of the population has a high mould sensitivity.
Yep.
And those people cannot be in mouldy buildings. They have severe health impacts, such as chronic fatigue is one of the really big ones. And I think there are a lot of people sort of running around the country with all these severe health ailments that they don't actually connect with their living environment. You know, the health professionals in Australia don't make that connection for them. And so there's a huge information gap there. Stats are that 40% of Australian homes, new Australian homes and apartments have got mould in them. In my experience, it's probably 100%.
Because mould, because you said something just there, like mould is everywhere. So what is the mould that's actually making us sick?
There's toxins in the mould. So, I mean, I couldn't give you the exact ins and outs of how it works.
Yeah.
There's a biotoxin in mould that is airborne, and you can disturb it, you know, if you've got mould growing on your curtains, for example.
Yeah.
Like you've got a window that condensates over and over again, and the curtains get damp and they grow mould over time.
Yeah.
When you disturb those curtains, the mould spores, there's a plume of mould spores
and
that you can't see. And you breathe it in.
Yep.
It affects your lungs and it affects your immune system.
Yep. And I think there's pretty high cases. There was a study from South Australia, I'm pretty sure from memory, it was 50% of Australian homes have mould that is directly linked to childhood asthma.
Yeah, asthma's huge. Those stats I'm, again, not 100% sure of, but respiratory issues are massive and, you know, in connection to mould.
Go back to this chronic fatigue thing for a second, because that's interesting. Kind of my mind goes to glandular fever when I think about chronic fatigue.
Did you have it when you were a kid?
I had glandular fever when I was a kid,
Kissing too many girls?
I tell you what, when I got glandular fever...
Is that why you wanted to bring this up?
No, just a gloat. No. When I got glandular fever, I definitely was not kissing girls. If you had to see me at that age, you probably know why. But yeah, like, it's interesting because, like, we kind of put chronic fatigue in like a little bucket over here and don't generally relate it to maybe where we live or sleep or spend 80 to 90% of our time. So, like, are there actually studies that sort of make that link between mould and chronic fatigue?
There are.
Yeah.
So there's a guy in the US called Richie Shoemaker, and he is sort of the SIRS guy. He's the doctor.
Okay, yep.
SIRS is chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and that is an umbrella term for the multitude of illnesses that come from mould exposure. So it's basically an inflammatory response in the body. So
is SIRS S-E-R?
C, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So it encompasses so many different things. I have a slide in one of my presentations that lists all of them. There must be 30 or 40 different sort of ailments that are directly related to mould exposure that sort of is not commonly known.
All right, so we agree mould equals bad. We don't want mould in our buildings.
I mean, generally, even if you're not susceptible to mould, if you're not mould sensitive, you kind of don't want it anyway because it's
And the
it's
answer
unsightly
isn't
and
just getting some White King and bleaching it off.
No, bleach, definitely not. It will kill the surface mould and it will make the colour go away, but it doesn't kill the roots of the mould.
And the only way to get rid of it is to remove
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I wanted to get at, because I think people have this idea where bit of paint, bit of White King, it's all good, it's all gone, but it's what you can't see. This is actually what is hurting you.
Yeah, and you can kill mould, but all it needs is a little bit of dampness and moisture and it'll come straight back.
Yeah.
So.
Now, you're talking about doctors and the medicine side of things. Why isn't it recognised by doctors and medicine as an issue?
There was a research paper done in 2018, I forget the name of it, the research into biotoxin illness in Australia, and it was done in Victoria, I think, in this state.
Yeah.
I've read parts of it, and there were so many patients and health practitioners who came to the front, who put their hand forward and said, this is my experience, and blah, blah, blah. And essentially, the Australian medical response was, we're just going to put that over here, umbrella term of things that we don't understand. And it was sort of dismissed by and large by that study from the parts of that study that I have read, which is pretty frustrating for those people who have to live in tents in their back garden because they can no longer be inside their houses.
Do you know what is frustrating? That the NCC, which is I guess what dictates how we build here in Australia, has made that connection now. They put it in the 2022 NCC updates. But they've quite nicely handballed that responsibility onto the builder.
Yeah, if anyone actually pulled that clause out of the code and said, I'm going to sue you because my house is mouldy, it's actually very vague as to where that buck actually stops. You know, because there's a whole raft of people who have an input in how that works.
Totally.
Down, to the energy assessor, the architect, the builder, the client, you know.
That's really interesting actually that you talk about the client, because say I could build a passive house, right? And the clients could turn their HRV off and they could close all their windows and they could actually create an environment where there's mould.
Yeah, they could.
So, you know, we build these homes where we think that the clients are going to thrive in this environment, but they could be a one-star client and create this really toxic environment and they're going to get sick. So where does the buck stop?
Yeah,
it's a really interesting point that you make there.
Yeah, the clause in the code requires some further development, and it requires some interpretation and someone to actually clarify, because at the moment it's in there and it's sort of waking people up and it's making people think, but it's still very vague.
It is very vague, and I think without and this is where we think that there's shortcomings in the NCC, there might be just one or two. Just one or two. Because, you know, we want to stop mould.
That's coming from Mr. Switzerland too.
But then there's no requirement for mechanical ventilation, but we want to make sure the buildings are really well ventilated, and then we're going to put a class 4 wrap over the entire building. Are we not creating an environment that's probably susceptible to mould if we're not then ventilating properly?
Yes. So in the 2025 code, are you talking about cavity ventilation? Or are you talking about
I'm just talking about just ventilation in the house.
I mean, the code currently doesn't.
The code currently says that you just need to be able to open your windows and doors, and they need to be built-in, designed in a way to potentially prevent water ingress. Yep. I'm pretty sure that's how it's written. It's like it has to have the ability to stop water.
Anyway, I'm going to put my Switzerland hat back on again because we shit can the NCC, but I think that what I want to talk about is mould is bad, and what is it that you do in your daily life that helps educate people or train people on how to create a really healthy living environment?
Majority of that comes down to sort of the management of heat, air and moisture and how that is done on site. So I work primarily with builders and clients. I'm finding that the drive from clients is quite strong. Clients will go to a builder such as yourselves, and then sometimes that price point is out of their budget. They'll go to a builder who gives them a lower price, and then they'll circle back to me and they'll say, hey Jess, can you help me do all that cool stuff but with this builder? My first question is, does the builder want to know about this? And so that's a large part of my job, is going on site, talking to builders, getting on the phone, looking at plans, like working out how far I can push it with each individual builder.
How do you refer to yourself? Are you a building scientist, building biologist?
Building science consultant is sort of what I've knuckled it down to, because when someone asks me what I do, I'm like, I don't know how to tell you.
And you're going down a journey of this building biologist.
Yeah.
And do you want to just tell us what that is?
Yeah, so building biology is basically just a study of the home and the how it impacts your health. There's a course that I'm doing through the Australian College of Environmental Studies with a lady named Nicole Bilmore. She's fabulous.
Was she on your podcast?
She was.
Yeah, I
she was
listened
on
to that. Yeah.
Episode 3, I think.
Yeah.
So she is the sort of director of the college. She is sort of leading that building biology industry in Australia and has been doing for some time. I mean, building biology is the study of the home and the health impacts that it has. So the subjects are things like, mould is obviously the first one. There's 2 very large mould subjects. Then there's, low tox materials. There's like subjects on water, Feng Shui, because it also comes down to the soul.
This is where I want to get at, because I feel like building biology has this woo-woo hippie, I'm going to do a rain dance out in an open field view.
I don't think so.
I reckon that's a general, what people would feel.
I think it's Matt's general.
No, but I think that's what the industry, a lot of people would feel it's that way, but like for us, this is just how you should build.
This is bread and butter stuff.
Yeah,
like the mould stuff is what attracted me to building biology.
Yeah.
Feng Shui is kind of like a cool addition, because how you feel in a space affects your well-being.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I listened to a podcast the other day, I can't remember whose it was, and I had a Feng Shui expert on it, and I'm like, it actually sounds pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
I just want to get back to your mentor. What was her name again?
Nicole.
Nicole, okay. Because I was listening to your podcast, and for those who don't know, what's your podcast called?
The Building Sciology Poddie.
Thank you, plug. She had a really interesting story about pregnancy.
Yes.
And like, as someone who's gone through stuff with pregnancy and had babies and all that kind of stuff, like it's a pretty traumatic place to be in. And listening to her story about how many miscarriages does she have?
10.
Like 10.
10. And now she's got 3 children happily.
10 miscarriages.
10.
Yeah, but what was really interesting about hers, and I always kind of take these kinds of stories because they're quite anecdotal, right? Now, however, the evidence from her experience, she moved rooms.
Yeah. So she attributed her miscarriages to geopathic stress and EMFs.
Which is pretty crazy, right? Now, I'm going to be the first person to say I am not convinced on EMFs just yet, right? And I think that's fine.
I'm on the fence too.
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm on the fence, right? I know, Matt.
So I think that I think that they are a load of potential crap, but I also think that you shouldn't be living next to a 5G tower or putting your modem or your solar inverter at the back of your bed head. So whilst I think a lot of it is a load of crap, I also think a lot of it is also relevant.
Sensible.
I think the issue is people just jump to the whole end of the other scale and focus on things like this.
EMFs exist.
They do, but
they exist.
No study that has actually been independently taken out or has been peer reviewed that shows they're an issue within the Australian household.
I've Googled this a couple of times. If you go onto the WHO website, the World Health Organization, their opinion is that in some circumstances with some immunocompromised people, maybe sometimes pregnant people can be impacted by EMFs.
There's one study on pregnant women in a household around cooktops, that's it. But only between certain periods of a certain trimester.
I think Nicole's PhD was on EMFs.
Yeah.
So I would be interested to read that.
But it wasn't, for people who haven't listened to that podcast episode with Nicole, it is worthwhile going back and listening to it because it really is an interesting thing just to make you think. If that's all it does, then I think it's doing the right thing.
And that's why
just being aware
of the woo
it.
stuff. Like I feel a lot of it is pushed so far down the other end where it feels like you've got to wear a tinfoil hat to be part of that conversation. And I think sometimes like simple shit, we always say simple shit works, we've got to bring it back to the basics and educate people around, hey, don't put the solar inverter at the back of a bed head and just start with that. You wean people onto the conversation, then
you
make
can't
people,
alienate people.
and make them feel stupid or make people feel scared and use fear-mongering to then push that agenda.
When we're talking about cost of building and, some people might not be able to afford to build a passive house or the homes that Matt and I build. What are the 3 things, and I'm just randomly picking 3, what are the 3 things that you would say are absolute, must-haves in any building?
Blow it or test?
Yes, okay, so air tightness.
Yeah, so quantifying your air tightness. So you can understand how to ventilate it appropriately.
Oh, yes, I love that.
So you don't necessarily have to build airtight, but you just have to understand where your airtightness is at in order to make it a healthy place.
And we're talking about like a $800 to $1,000 exercise here.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So quantifying air tightness.
Yep.
Which should be mandatory in the NCC. Let's just put that, like how that is not.
But let's also point out the NCD does say that we should be building to. It says in the NCC that all Australian homes should be no more than 10 air changes.
Optional.
Is that optional?
Yes.
How can you have something that you can do it, but it's also you have to do it, but it's also optional?
It's a performance solution. So you can make sure that your windows are kind of sealed or able to be sealed. You can make sure that your exhaust fans are sealed or able to be sealed, or you can do a boiler test to comply with the building sealing section of the building code. So it's not compulsory.
Okay, so that's number one, quantifying air tightness.
Yes, quantify your air tightness so you can understand what you're dealing with, because it's invisible.
Yeah.
The second thing is thermal bridging. So if you have any steel, please insulate it externally. Please.
Quantifying air tightness, thermal bridges, managing thermal bridges.
Yep, including I put window frames.
Correct.
In
Yep.
that
I was going
category.
to say, but you've said 3 and then you haven't put windows, which is the most important. I was like, please put windows back
Windows is in thermal bridging.
Yeah.
So upgrade your windows, your window frames as much as you can. And the third one, non-negotiable, would be check your insulation when it's being installed. Make sure that is done properly, because if you have big gaps, then you have thermal bridges and you have heat loss.
Now, I was probably a little bit unfair then, just saying pick 3, because
there's
lots of them.
is,
but
yeah.
like I feel that like you're just talking about quantifying air tightness, because if we kind of use these as subheadings, quantifying air tightness then allows you to understand what ventilation strategy you're going to be using. So that could be fans, it could be opening windows, it could be ducted range hoods, it could be this, could be that, or it could be on the other end a full centralised ventilation system if you're really airtight.
Yeah.
Thermal bridges, if we look at that as a subheading, it covers so many things.
Yeah, it does.
Timbers and steel projecting out through windows, it obviously covers
how the building is framed so that you don't have big voids.
Yep. And then checking your insulation. Fuck me, why I don't know that is not something that shouldn't be checked.
It's really easy, and it's actually easy. It's also very difficult, because I think the issue is people walk around with a thermal imaging and go, yeah, it's all good, but is there heat differential from inside to outside?
Yeah,
actually showing you what's happening. You've got to
at.
actually understand what you're looking at too.
Yeah.
So,
but if you think of the investment that you're making in insulation, it's such a small percentage of the overall build cost. But it's probably, I would argue, one of the most important things.
And one code, one line in the NCC can change both. Two of those points is like a building must be verified to meet its performance goal. That cancels out. That ticks off the insulation, and that ticks off the air tightness.
So your 3 takeaways: quantifying air tightness, thermal bridges, and checking insulation.
Correct.
Now, you have your own podcast, as we talked about before. So my final question to you is, when are we coming on?
Let's book it in.
Because I feel like a lot of the things that we're talking about, or what we talk about and what you talk about, are super relevant to both of our audiences.
Yeah.
So, for everyone who's listening to this, who loves the Mindful Builder podcast, definitely jump on. And Building Sciology podcast.
Yep.
How many episodes are you up to now?
Just about to release episode 7 on Monday.
Boom. And I understand that's all done by you.
Yeah.
All right.
Me, myself and I.
Now, Jackson, I'm going to look at the camera here. I feel that there should be a small investment from Climate Shore and Enduro Builders that is going to be invested in Jess's podcast. So, Jess, you're welcome.
Cool.
Thanks for coming on.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.